Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a literal mystery in the modern fashion world. We're going to unpack exactly why one of the planet's most coveted luxury brands, a brand that dresses the absolute biggest A-list celebrities and drives insane global demand, literally, and I mean literally, refuses to take your money. It's an absolute masterclass in controlled exclusivity, and we are going to break down exactly how the whole shebang works.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's start with a story. Picture this. You fly all the way to Paris for your 30th birthday. Your one big goal? You want to buy the famous Chrome Hearts cemetery ring. So you march right up to the Montaigne Avenue store, Amex in hand, ready to go. But the guy at the door tells you to come back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Okay, no problem. You show up the next day, 15 minutes early, super excited. And what happens? You're met with a flat-out rejection. No explanation, just a cold, hard nah. No walk-ins allowed today. You walk away empty-handed.
Now you might be thinking, well, they just caught him on a bad day, right? But here's the crazy part. That frustrating little anecdote isn't some rare fluke. If you hop on Reddit or TikTok right now, you'll see countless stories just like it. People physically standing at the store, cash in hand, and they just cannot buy a thing. It completely shatters how we think retail is supposed to work. Because Chrome Hearts doesn't operate like a traditional store. It's a closed, totally opaque system. The access is unequal, the rules are hidden, and the really good stuff, yeah, that rarely even makes it to the display case. But they didn't start out as this impenetrable fortress. Let's rewind a bit. Founded back in 1988 in Los Angeles by Richard Stark and his partners, it actually started out just crafting leather goods for a super niche underground crowd. The turning point? Well, the idea spread like wildfire over the decades. I mean, you had Matt LeBlanc rocking a custom all-leather sling to the '96 Emmys, and today, they're whipping up custom red carpet looks for Timothée Chalamet and decking out a literal bespoke Rolls-Royce Cullinan for Drake. By 2021, their LA production hub had exploded to over 1,000 staff members. And as you'd guess, all that cultural clout translates into some serious financial weight. Now, they're notoriously private. They don't just hand out their financial statements, but market estimates peg their brand valuation at a staggering number. We are talking hundreds of billions, with some estimates reaching up to 2 trillion yen. 2 trillion. To put that into perspective, that astronomical scale is exactly why millions of people willingly put themselves through such a frustrating closed-door buying process, because at this point, actually possessing the item is a status symbol of the absolute highest worth. So, let's pull back the curtain here. The reveal? 2 distinct markets. Lexi Everhard, who's a global marketing director over at Grailed, made a really brilliant observation about this. She pointed out that demand here is heavily stratified. We're actually looking at 2 completely different markets living under one brand name. On one side, you've got the visible market. These are your standard printed tees, hoodies, and those trucker hats you see absolutely everywhere. That's the entry point. It drives volume. But on the flip side is the invisible market. We're talking the heavy sterling silver, the super rare cross-patch denim that resells for tens of thousands, and those wild 10 million yen custom pieces. In that invisible market, the price isn't really about the silver or the denim anymore. It's dictated purely by your relationship with the brand.
This represents a huge shift in the culture. The content creator Daryl August, you might know him as The Inhibitionist, noted that back in the early 2010s, this was a tight-knit community of collectors buying stuff just to wear it. But now, the 2020s landscape is completely dominated by highly calculating professional resellers. As August puts it perfectly, the prices you're seeing are no longer about the item itself. They are entirely about access.
Which brings us to how this actually functions. The mechanics, pay to play.
So, the obvious question, if all the good stuff is invisible, how do you actually get it? Well, you've got to play their game. Step 1, you buy the entry-level stuff, the trucker hats, the t-shirts. Step 2, you slowly build up a purchase history, basically proving to the sales associates that you're a loyal customer. And finally, step 3, eventually, you are granted the privilege, yes, the privilege, to order something high-end, like a full-spec Celtic roller belt. It's a classic pay-to-play model. It's super similar to how Rolex or Hermes operates, right? You can't just walk in off the street and buy a Birkin bag. But August does point out one tiny silver lining. While Rolex only has like 15 core models, Chrome Hearts has a massive catalog of SKUs, which makes navigating this system just a little bit easier if you really know what you're doing. But for everyone else, that leads us to the reality, paying the toll. Let's be real. Most people do not have the time or the patience to spend months dropping cash just to build a store relationship. Because that primary market is so heavily gatekept, the secondary resale market has basically become the primary market for a lot of buyers. And that introduces a crucial concept, the access tax. Say you're a stylist for a major rapper and you need exclusive cross-patch denim for a shoot tomorrow. You can't wait 6 months. You go to the secondary market. Buyers are knowingly paying massive, exorbitant premiums to resellers simply for the right to skip the line and get the item today.
Want to know what that access tax actually looks like? Let's jump back to our Paris story and that cemetery ring. Back in 2016, you could grab that ring on the resale market for about 75,000 yen. Flash forward a decade later, that exact same ring skyrocketed to over 320,000 yen. That is a mind-blowing 329% jump. The silver didn't change, the design didn't change, the only thing that went up was the literal cost of access.
And honestly, this wild hype is backed up by some hard economic data. A recent report from the Boston Consulting Group shows the whole global luxury resale market is just exploding. They project it's going to grow from roughly 33 trillion yen today to a staggering 57 trillion yen by 2030. And Chrome Hearts, they are already sitting pretty comfortably as a top 5 brand on major resale platforms like Grailed. They are riding this massive wave. So why does this seemingly restrictive system work so brilliantly for them? Well, for starters, they saw a 21% year-over-year growth on resale platforms precisely because they ignore the usual fashion rules. They operate totally outside the seasonal calendars, no spring-summer hype, no autumn-winter rushes. By keeping their primary supply strictly controlled and leaning into designs that never really change, they make themselves completely immune to fleeting trend cycles. They don't boom and bust. Actually, scratch that, they don't behave like a fashion brand at all. They behave more like a blue-chip stock, a slow, steady, incredibly coveted long-term investment.
Which brings us to our final point, the takeaway. Buy for love.
When you're staring down locked doors and crazy resale prices, what are you supposed to actually do? I think Daryl August hit the nail on the head with his advice. He says, don't treat it as an investment. Buy it because you genuinely love it. Look, the prices are going to keep going up, and the system is designed to be frustrating. But if you strip away all the professional resellers and the artificial access games, what you have left is just beautifully crafted, heavy sterling silver with an amazing legacy. Your purchase really has to be rooted in a personal, emotional connection to the art itself, not just playing into the hype.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. We are clearly entering this fascinating, kind of wild new era where simply having the cash in your bank account is no longer enough to buy luxury. Access itself is the new currency. As these brands continue to pull the velvet rope tighter and tighter, what is the access tax going to cost next? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I really hope this totally changes how you look at the price tags and the locked doors of modern fashion.